Hello, this is Susan Cullen, President of Quantum Learning Solutions, and this is a recording of a webinar I presented on January 15th, 2009, entitled How to Maximize Learning on a Minimized Budget. Welcome to the session. Let's begin by first telling you a little bit about our organization, and then we will look at our agenda for today. Quantum was founded in 1989. We have offices in Philadelphia and Yardley, Pennsylvania, as well as Chicago, Illinois, and we are management development and productivity specialists. Our focus is providing high-impact learning to meet the bottom line results our clients are seeking. So our learning model puts a great deal of emphasis on self and organizational assessment up front in order to really identify the key needs of any individual or organization. Within our learning experience, we provide a lot of opportunities to learn, practice, and apply the concepts to the participants' real-world experience. And then we are strong believers in the importance of reinforcement and use a variety of resources and put a great deal of emphasis here. We don't believe that learning equals attending. We believe that learning equals real change. So that's a little bit about us. Let's look at our objectives and agenda for this program. Our objectives for this session are to overview a proven method for enhancing workplace learning and to recognize some successful low-cost resources that can provide maximum impact for your organization now. We'd also like to give you an opportunity to recognize the current trends in the delivery of training so that you can benchmark your own organization against those trends. So I will share with you some good ideas and suggestions and then provide one solution at the end that we think is critical for helping your workforce be productive now. On today's agenda, we'll talk about some of the business challenges that you're currently facing and the things that are happening due to the economic environment that we're all in. We'll also look at the learning needs of the changing workforce and what's happening within organizations across the country. We'll talk about how to maximize learning on a minimized budget and give you some really good suggestions and tips you can use immediately, and then share with you some training design best practices and some case study examples for what this would look like and how it would be implemented. And at the end, again, share with you some resources that we think can be very beneficial. I'd like to say thank you to those of you who completed our survey in advance of this session. I think a little more than half of the 50 people registered did provide us feedback, and we tried to reach most of you by phone. My apologies if we were unable to make connections with everyone, but the survey information that we did send out was an opportunity for us to find out really what's happening in your organization, and I thought it would be helpful to you to see some of the results from those who did respond, so I've sprinkled them throughout this presentation today. One question we did ask was, how important is it to your organization to find more cost-effective ways to deliver training? We recognize that 8% really weren't sure, 24% said somewhat, and by far the majority of you said that this was very important to you now. So let's begin by talking about just what is happening in today's economic climate, and probably we could all sum it up in just one word, and that would be ouch. You may be facing one or many of these things: corporate budget cuts, reorganization, people being laid off, finding that anything that you spend money on is being highly scrutinized, and modest, if any, salary increases. Many of you may not have had any of those at all, and your salary increases might have been frozen. So we'll bring in the first polling question now and let you indicate to us how many of these you are experiencing in your organization at this time. As we can see, many of you are experiencing quite a few of these in your organization. And so let's look now at the impact that's having on your workforce, because you probably are seeing that there's a decline in morale due to layoffs, that people are worried. They're wondering if they're going to be next, and that at the same time, for those that are still there, there's a hiring freeze, and that's added additional stress to the existing workers because they have more to do in less time. So they're carrying a heavier load. And that leads to burnout, fear, and stress. And it's a real challenge that you may be facing. So the challenge then becomes, in the midst of this turmoil, how do you keep productivity on the upswing even when the economy heads into a downturn? So before we can begin to address how to really maximize learning, it's important to recognize the changing demographics and its impact on your organization. For one thing, we know there aren't enough good workers ready. Every 8 seconds, a boomer turns 50, and 1/3 of the country turns 50 by 2010. That is not that far away. So we're going to be opening up new opportunities without enough of the younger generation ready to step up to the plate. In fact, one of the biggest problems we've been hearing most organizations say is that there's a gap in the leadership pipeline. With the exodus of the baby boomers, they find that there are not enough people ready and able to fill their shoes. There just aren't enough managers ready, willing, and able to step up to the plate with this knowledge and skill they need to be effective in those positions. In one study of over 700 organizations, they found that the single largest talent problem cited from their research is the current and impending gap in the leadership pipeline. Our experience in talking with many organizations confirms this to be the case as well. Generational differences also have an impact in the organization at large. The differences in work ethic can be very apparent as the generations try to work together effectively. The Y generation grew up with technology that the matures may still not be fully comfortable with. And because of the ease of information generated from that technology, their approach to learning is also different. They want to be constantly and immediately connected to the knowledge and learning opportunities that they seek. It's important to know how to manage this generation that's entering the workforce because an outdated management approach just won't work with them. Also, as we see a growing demand for technical workers, we recognize that the skill set to manage people is very different from the technological skill set they studied in school. People are working in teams, and the ability to work with and manage people is a critical competency for organizational success. So you don't want to promote new managers into their positions without providing them training and development opportunities to know how to be effective in that position. As a result, we see that the American Society of Training and Development, in their State of the Industry report, still cites managerial and supervisory training as one of the top areas for training expenditures. So it's going to be very important, even in a down economy, to feed your leadership pipeline with managers who are trained and ready to fill the gap as the boomers retire. So as we've talked about the need for training your managers, it's important to also look at what's happening with the rest of your organization at the same time. As we mentioned a minute ago, downsizing puts more pressure on those remaining. Even just the anticipation or the not knowing is if someone is going to lose their job or not presents a tremendous level of stress and anxiety in your workforce. And as a result, there are more mistakes, more sick days, and just a lot of fear. So people can then become overwhelmed. They're unable to manage it all. They have more work to do at the same time because they're picking up the slack for people who have gone. And so this is all adding to more and more stress and a loss of productivity. And speaking of the workload, we're all constantly barraged with more and more and more information. In fact, it's getting harder and harder to disconnect because we've got voicemail, email, Blackberries, text messages. We don't leave work at the office, and it's harder to unplug. But here's the key point. All the communication technology we have makes everything urgent. The phone is ringing or there's a text message and you answer it now. This means that we're always busy, but we've lost track of the work that's really important. So that's things like planning, strategic thinking, coaching, and preventing problems before they occur. We feel that there are several key learning needs for organizations to then address at this time. The first one is management development, to make sure that your pipeline is filled and that you have future leaders ready to step up to the plate. And also to address generational understanding. To ignore that and not address it is to really miss a real need and something that's happening in every organization nationwide. Also the ability to adapt to change, the need to be flexible, the need to look at new ways to do things. And also a very, very critical need is time management, the ability to understand how do we stay on top of it all and keep ahead of the game in order to have a greater sense of control and be more productive. We also encourage you to focus on anything that's going to be impacting the customer in order to keep your customers loyal to you. And that may be customer service, product knowledge, sales training, things of that sort. But you may be saying, I agree we have those needs, but the economy is bad now. And there's a myth that says that training is not important to the organization's strategy in hard times. Yet the fact is that training can ease the pain when the going gets tough. In fact, organizations that have effectively aligned all of their talent development functions can more readily assess the performance gaps that drive productivity, so you then have a competitive edge when you need it the most. There was a very interesting study published in Harvard Business Review by Lori Bassi. She said that the education and training variable is the most significant predictor of an organization's success as compared to price to earnings ratios, price to book statistics, and measures of risk and volatility. Now, what's interesting about this is that Bassi puts her theories to the test. She's launched an investment firm that buys stocks in companies that invest heavily in employee training. And what's also interesting is that her investments have topped the S&P by 4 percentage points for the past couple of years. She has a proven track record that her theories are accurate. Now, I do recommend, for more information, that you might want to get a reprint of this Harvard Business Review article, because I think you'll find it's a really good justification for the value of investing in your people, especially when times are tough. She goes on to say that companies that fail to invest in employees jeopardize their own success and even survival. Until recently, there simply were not robust methods for measuring the bottom line contributions of investments in human capital management, things like leadership development, job design, and knowledge sharing. But that's all changed now, partly because of her work. So let's look now at some ideas to help you maximize your learning efforts on a minimized budget. What can you do to fill your organization's workforce needs, and how can you do it on a minimized budget? One of the first things you'll want to do is take a hard look at how are you providing learning opportunities now. Is it just in the traditional classroom, or are there opportunities to think outside the box? It may be important to reinvent the way you've done things and to look for new delivery methods. Some suggestions for cutting back creatively are, first of all, to do everything you can to reduce travel costs. You don't want your learning budget to be applied towards airline tickets and hotels. Secondly, to make sure that you piggyback training then with any meetings that are already in place, and do everything that you can to increase the number of people participating in a classroom at one time. The benefit is that this will reduce your per person fees significantly. We also encourage you to minimize the impact on working hours by providing learning at off times or slow times, and eliminate catering. That's something that's really not as essential, or reduce the cost there somehow. Use your own internal staff to facilitate off-the-shelf programs, and also put training online. We see a real increase in this last point about putting training online. The American Society for Training and Development indicates that online learning accounted for over 30% of learning hours, up from over 11% 5 years ago. And all trends indicate that this will continue to rise even higher in the future. There are two primary types of online learning that we see the most. Live instructor-led learning. This is frequently what we do in a webinar format. And also online self-paced learning, or podcasts. Those are also gaining in popularity. But we're seeing really primarily those two types of online learning. From the survey data that you provided us in advance of this session, we'd asked how frequently does your organization provide live instructor-led learning now? And what we found is that 32% of you indicated that you really haven't used that at all. About 28% said that you'd use it occasionally, and 40% say that you use it frequently. We then also asked how frequently does your organization provide self-paced e-learning? And again, we recognize that 24% of you said that you haven't used it, 47% said you occasionally use it, and 29% say you use it frequently. When we asked where are the majority of your employees located, 35% of you said in one location and 65% said in various locations across the country or even internationally. So if you are among the 65% who have employees spread out in various locations, it makes a lot of sense to consider providing learning in an online format that can reduce your travel costs tremendously. Of course, some of the benefits of live online learning is that obviously there are no travel costs. When you present it in small pieces, you can reduce time away from work, so you can make your learning a process of small pieces spread out over time. You can very easily customize live online learning. It's not expensive to do, and you can then really tailor it to your organization's specific needs. When you design it well, you can design it to encourage more accountability because people are assigned application exercises between sessions that they need to report back on. And what's also really good about live online learning is that you can incorporate management visibility and support in your sessions. You can train any topic this way if you're creative. You can even utilize role plays. For example, we provided a targeted training program to help one of our clients' managers coach their staff when performance problems exist. We trained their managers in Dubai, India, and Dusseldorf, Germany without ever leaving our U.S. offices. We facilitated skill practice sessions with them, and the facilitator participated in these sessions by phone. The participants then really learned and incorporated the skills taught, and our reinforcement session with them later also enabled them to demonstrate those skills. So our client achieved the results they wanted at a fraction of the cost to send one of our facilitators to India or Germany. Let's look now at self-paced e-learning because there are many benefits here as well. Again, you have no travel costs. You can reduce time away from the office with other important duties that someone might have, and it can also be accessed 24/7. The downside is that it can sometimes get pushed aside by other tasks if people feel they're too busy for training. So our experience has shown that requiring a completion deadline or making a course be pre-worked to another program can help you enhance your completion rates. Let's look now at what you need to do to make your training design the most effective as possible. Many organizations will blend the use of classroom, online instructor-led, and online self-paced learning into their programs, and there are several best practices for doing this that we'd like to share. We think that one of the primary things to begin with is to make sure that your courses address the performance issues that have a real impact on business results. So make sure that you mention those up front and tie your program into business strategy. And then design the course to focus on doing a few important things very well rather than covering all possible topics. Structure the program so that learning is a process and not an event. In other words, it is spread out over time as opposed to a 2-day program where people come back and put their workbook on the shelf and forget about it. And explain why the training is really being conducted and what's the benefit to the participants. Provide tools for helping each person create an action plan and record that plan during the program, and then give them plenty of opportunities to discuss and reinforce the lessons learned throughout the course. Make sure that you have lots of practice exercises and that they're realistic and related as much to their work environment as possible, and give them feedback during those practice exercises. You'll want to provide ample post-course follow-up resources and discuss expectations for ongoing accountability and application to the job. Another good idea is to help participants identify individuals for a learning support group that they can have as an ongoing resource and reinforcement tool, and encourage them also to share their action plans with their respective managers after the program is over for ongoing reinforcement as well. And last but not least, and probably one of the most important of all, is to secure and demonstrate visible support from senior leadership throughout the entire process. Let's look now at several case studies that illustrate just how this can be structured. This is an example of a program that we created for one of our clients who wanted to reduce employee turnover. It was delivered to over 500 people in offices nationwide, and the entire program was delivered virtually. It consisted of 4 self-paced e-learning courses with action plans to be completed at the end of each course and given to management. Then each month a live virtual reinforcement session was held with all participants, and the managers participated in that as well. We also sent everyone a reinforcement tips newsletter at each month, and this included surveys and opportunities for feedback back to us during the process. The end result was that the client reduced their employee turnover rates, and the entire program was delivered virtually with minimum expense and no travel costs. This is an example of a fundamental management skills program which can be delivered virtually and with minimum time taken out of the day. It's a combination of live virtual training sessions with one online self-paced course. And what makes this work so well is the element of accountability and reinforcement that's designed into the program. Once again, when you make learning a process as opposed to an event, you create more opportunities for learning transfer to occur. And so the end result is that the impact of your training is greater while your investment in time and financial resources is reduced. One of the most consistent requests that we get for live instructor-led training is in the subject of time management. And I think this is because everyone is so busy today and they feel that they don't have time to take a day for a time management class. So ironically, this program has worked really well. It is designed so that each person receives a 32-page time mastery profile as pre-work before the class begins. And this helps them pinpoint their unique strengths and development needs among 10 different areas of time management. Then the 90-minute webinar that follows provides key tips everyone can use and builds on some of the concepts in their workbook materials. At the end of that session, each person identifies and commits to enhancing their skills in one of the 10 areas from their profile, and they make themselves accountable for coming back in 1 month and reporting on their progress. We first started providing this program this way about 6 years ago, and it has been extremely successful. So let's look now at some of the resources that Quantum Learning Solutions can provide you to help your organization meet its needs in a very productive but also cost-effective way. We have a full library of online instructor-led programs. Some of the titles are here, but you'll also see more on our website. Among them, you'll recognize things like behavioral interviewing, coping with stress, that has a very good stress profile with it. Effective listening also has a listening profile. Capitalizing on team talents, ways to really enhance team skills in your organization. Addressing performance issues, motivating others, and again, time management, as we just discussed. We also have a complete library of online self-paced courses with many titles under the basic general headings of management development, customer service, and sales training, and you can actually preview those courses from our website. We also have quite a few courses that you can facilitate yourselves. Each of these are off-the-shelf programs that contain a fully scripted leader's guide, a PowerPoint presentation that has video included and embedded in the presentation, and you can also print off the materials yourself, so it's very easy for anyone to facilitate these sessions. Here are some of the program topics that are available in the IDX Ready format that you can facilitate. Again, a couple of programs, collaborative skills for teams and capitalizing on team talents. There's also a very good sales training program, a management training program, listening skills, and a program for conflict management. We have 2 classes coming up. The first one is in January, starts in January with the reinforcement session on February 20th. The second session starts February 5th with the reinforcement session in March. My contact information is on the screen. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions. Also, we would like to ask for your feedback now by clicking on the link where you see the feedback form on this slide. Please make sure to put your name at the top of the feedback form and remember to hit the submit button. And again, we'd like to thank you for your time and your participation today. Best wishes to you.